ongoing stories related to the pandemic. Obviously, still going strong here in Australia. Unfortunately, New South Wales recorded another 1,000 cases today, the time we're recording this. The Melbourne one, the Victorian one, still kind of bubbling along at relatively low case numbers, obviously compared to New South Wales. Well, I mean, we're still well under 100, but it's still kind of chugging along, which is a little concerning. Obviously, the two states and the ACT still in full lockdown. Lots of discussion again, and there was the announcement this week that the Pfizer would be opened up to 12 to 15-year-olds, and this idea, and then obviously there's this wider discussion around vaccinating children and the importance of doing that. Obviously, there's a component of it that's around what the wider issue of spread. So the more people you get vaccinated, that kind of you would hope would be attempting to address that issue a bit more head on. The more you get vaccinated, the better it is. But on the other side of it, I think there's a lot of concern, particularly from parents, etc., around how does the Delta variant in particular affect children, and even while it may be that children might only get mild reactions for most part to the Delta variant, I'm pretty sure that parents still don't want their kids to catch it. Because it's still a virus, it's still something that's dealt with, and I guess because it's still such a new version of the virus, for lack of a better term, we still don't know what the long-term effects are.
Yeah, well, look, unfortunately for all parents, there's only two choices. You either vaccinate your kids to protect them from COVID, or you let them catch COVID. Because one of those two things is going to happen. So, it's unfortunate that that's the only choice. And I think, obviously our health professionals sort of are trying to, I guess, message around the benefits. I mean, but look, we vaccinate children already against a whole range of very horrible diseases. Yeah. And, there's easily the argument that vaccinating them against COVID is probably better as achieving herd immunity for all of our society. But, by the same token, if you don't vaccinate because you don't think it'll be serious for children, but then in that one-off case it is, then, it's a no-win situation. So people can only really make the choice of, and I think this applies to all of us now in the community, you have to assume that at some stage in the future you'll get COVID, and then your choice is, and the evidence shows that you would be better off vaccinated than unvaccinated. And it's as simple as that.
Absolutely. I think just lastly too, I think there's a part of the story that's impacting, the overall political narrative strategy, whatever you want to call it, in that as more people are getting vaccinated, and then you think of, say, childcare centres, schools, etc., and this, potential argument you could see coming where if you've got, say, parents who don't want to vaccinate their kids, and how that's going to come to a head in an environment where they're sharing space with the vaccinated kids, etc. And you can tell that there could potentially be some big arguments happening between families, etc., on the ground, but then also more broadly in the overall sort of discussion that happens as a nation, kind of thing.
Yeah, there shouldn't be though. We already have the no vax, no play in childcare. So if you're not vaccinated against whooping cough and a few others, then you can't really enjoy the benefits of those centres, and that's probably a good thing. That these diseases can be devastating for kids that age. So I don't see why COVID is any different to vaccinating against measles, chickenpox, or anything else, to be honest. Beyond that, I really don't have anything to give. I would encourage people to get vaccinated, and it's a very difficult topic because part of me, I guess, wants to say that I think parents should have that choice, but part of me also knows that the benefits of vaccination. So really, I would hope that anyone who had to think about making this choice would just go on the evidence and know that their kids already should have had and in most cases have been vaccinated quite safely. And this situation be no different.
I guess I'm forecasting like the eventual social media posts of outbursts of anger that I'm sure will be coming.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. And this is my point with a lot of the messaging. You know, as soon as you try to push mandatory jabs, these are the responses you'll get. And it's not about a question about whether someone's right or wrong. I think these responses are very natural in the situation. So given that I might not agree with somebody's choices, I don't think that's a reason necessarily to exclude them. I thought we're becoming a more inclusive society generally.
I guess it's the age-old thing, which I get would be the discussion for a whole other time. It's the idea of you're right as an individual to make the decisions you want to make, but what happens when that decision impacts other people who have different decisions. And in this particular case, you've got a public health concern when you're intermixing in a public environment. So it may be that, you can't force someone to have a vaccine, for instance, because that's their choice. But if they then voluntarily go into a public space and potentially infect other people because of that decision, that's where I find that whole thing, that's where it becomes like a kind of an interesting sort of argument to have.
And it's very interesting because if you look at the mortality rates or the damage that COVID causes, which we don't really know yet, if it was at a lighter end of the scale, I don't know. We don't mandate kids get vaccinated against the flu. And I'm not comparing COVID to the flu, by the way. I'm just saying that we don't mandate that. Yeah. And yet there could be an argument that you should.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a very, very tricky area. And with all the pressures that COVID's bringing upon people emotionally, financially, economically, et cetera, I think we just need to tread very carefully. You know, even if we,
I guess
we're right.
I guess
ethically, morally.
Yeah, I guess from what I was trying to get at was more that it's the mandate thing is one component, but I guess the focus is more on you as an individual, what you decide to do, but then also how you have to have an understanding of how it may potentially impact others as well, and vice versa. So. The reverse argument would be that you've got a whole bunch of vaccinated people piling on people that are unvaccinated, for instance. That's, I think, where it'll be interesting to see how that whole dialogue goes with this particular matter, the COVID issue. Because, as you said, there's a whole bunch of other things where it doesn't come up as an issue because it's just accepted as part of whatever the narrative has been.
That's right, and I think the fact that we've locked down and people want to be out of lockdown, and people say, well, you can't be out of lockdown unless we do this and that, and I think that's where these sorts of situations grow into something quite ugly, where we need to be really careful that we all stick together, that we're all as sort of mindful of each other's points of view as possible, and we've got to encourage each other to do the right thing without, condemning those that might not.